And here we are, Nala the Neptunian, the copeologist, okay? And we're going to be dealing with a lot of situations in which we are investigating or looking into the ways in which we cope with things on a spiritual level. But this, what I'm going to talk about real quick, and not for a very long time, will, I guess, encompass something a little bit different. Okay. First and foremost, if you are a spiritualist and you operate in a structured environment, I'm going to say this. You're going to have to get used to the more and more that you learn and unlock. And I think that what I'm getting is that people are becoming a lot more sensitive. Um, your abilities, these are, when I talk about abilities and gifts, I want to make a distinction between what has been popular on social media versus what I see in actuality, okay? When I'm talking about someone using their abilities, these are not abilities that just came online in your late 20s or 30s. These are things that are almost intertwined in your childhood. Okay, maybe you didn't understand what they were until you were much older. Maybe you thought that the things that you saw and or did were normal until you started to go to school with other kids. I mean, you could have been like me where you were always around your cousins or friends, doesn't matter whether you were in kindergarten or whatnot. I was well socialized, you know. Child, we're gonna get on that real quick. You can tell there's some people who are not socialized. They really were, I don't know. I don't know if they had a lot of struggles in childhood or they were not around a lot of kids their age, so they don't know how to socialize with people, how to speak to people, or they get weirded out. Like it's something weird. I don't know if maybe they were had some sort of learning disorder that like put them in special classes that you can see that with certain mercurial placements. You can see that the person may have not been, they had a hard time with learning, okay? Or they had a lot of mood disturbances, so that could mean that they were in classes with, maybe three or four people, 4 or 5 people. They weren't used to being in large classrooms or included in large things because socially you can kind of tell that they don't know how to interact with people. They don't they something's off about them, okay? I'm not talking about that. Now you do have people who have mental health conditions and they rely on the spiritual community to kind of substitute therapy, substitute the proper drugs, substitute accountability. I'm not speaking to any of that right now. And I'm being dead serious. I am speaking to those people who you've been working on your sensitivities since you were a kid. Okay? And so right now at your big age, you got to understand that there is everything. I'm not a person that is, I don't necessarily believe in everything being pre-written per se. I believe that we have free will to choose the mode that we arrive to a particular thing. Okay? And that's how I see things. So if those are predestined things, then maybe maybe it is predestined. Maybe those two paths or those three paths that you could choose are predestined based on the karmic responsibility of the soul. Because all of this, as it relates to our ego and who our identity is in a lifetime, it may transfer because it is a part of what we do in this life. In some schools of thought, some people don't believe like this, it does imprint on our Akashic record. So you can't ignore the full ego, because the ego is going to imprint with the data that survives into another lifetime, where it becomes habits that you don't know why you have. And these things were determined or nurtured or completed or mastered in a lifetime prior to this one. And I'm going to say this: if you're a person who has South Node in the 12th house, South Node in the 8th house, South Node in the 4th house, South Node in Scorpio, South Node in Cancer, South Node in Pisces, these type of positions um, absolutely denote, okay, high psychic probability. I see it even with people with South Node. I know some people will, it'll show up. The one chart that I looked at, it shows up in the third house on the fourth house cusp. But if you were to do whole sign, that South Node falls into the fourth house. And so these are things that you were doing and or events that you cannot explain, that have psychic significance from childhood. These are the people I'm speaking to. Okay? Do not get burned out, because these are things that you're becoming more sensitive. It's not just remote viewing. I know I said I was going to come back and talk about remote viewing, but I need to speak on this. Be careful when you are doing your wards, okay? If you are a person who sees clients, just hear me out, okay? And you do a ward and say, I don't want any negativity, no low vibration, only high vibration, okay? But next thing you know, as you're doing readings, you can't tap in. You have to realize in this world that you don't get to choose if your most prosperous thing operates in the low or high vibration. That's one of the reasons why I made it a point to say high vibrational evil. Because I think that we're getting into a place where we believe that just because something is low vibrational, it's bad. And that's not true. That's like blaming a person who is a victim of SA. You honestly think that person operating right now in a high vibration after they've been violated, but they need your help and they can't even find you? You're like, why didn't you find me? Because you defined your parameters as something high or low vibrational. You weren't very, we should be a lot more sensitive to things now. We should start breaking out of these collective thought processes and get into some areas of mastery, is what I guess I'm saying. A lot of what I'm seeing is that we are listening to other spiritualists and we are repeating what other people say. We don't actually know what the fuck they mean. Okay? The reason I'm saying it is that I went and I didn't test it out. It was something I found. It was by accident. I did a spell. Okay, and shout out to Lala of the Conjure, y'all. She is, I believe, she's ending her phase of doing metaphysical like items, and I got her grimoire. I have a couple of pieces of her things, and of course I got her perfumes. Let's really get into it. You already know I got the perfumes, bitch. Okay, but I think that she's like Like, I'm not, this is not a paid advertisement. Child, I have not worked to build my social media to be effective in that way. Not, at least not yet. And I'm gonna say this too. And when that happens, you won't know it's me. You won't even know it's bitch please. I work better behind the scenes. It is not about me. My personal things are for me. My North Node is in the first house. My North Node is not, it doesn't belong to anyone but me. And it has to be that way. It's my North Node is in Cancer in the first house. You know what I'm saying? Second house if you do whole sign, or if you measure it via Vedic, which puts me again on that eighth house cusp, right at the end of the seventh house going into the eighth house. I honestly just have I'm able to use the seventh and eighth house. I'm able to use the first and second house. I'm able to use the 11th and 12th house. All right, that's just the way it is. Okay, and I'm so happy because my chart is so fucking rad. It's so rad. It's so radical. Um, Most Cabbage Patch Kids are radical like that, and Cabbage Patch Kids are kids who are at the end of one generation and at the beginning of another generation. And so, I like to believe a lot of indigo or crystal children are born and they have the same things that I have going on. And I think we see a lot of indigo children in the 80s going into the early 90s, and then it picks back up in the 2000s. You have a huge grab for power with kids that were born in the 90s, but you see an ease of earning power with kids that were born in the 2000s. So I honestly think that 1990 would have been the last year that we see a lot of indigo children, and then it doesn't start back up until like 2002, 2003, and a little bit on. Okay, just hear me out. I'm willing to be wrong, but kids that were born, I want to say 95, 96, 97, 98, are concerned with material power, not as much as spiritual power. And there's a little bit of weakness because they come a lot. I'm noticing that there's a theme of kids who are born in this bracket that come to spirituality for material gain. So that's indicative of spiritual weakness, to the point where they are completely reliant on the outside world and the outside's opinion of them, which makes it easier for them to basically be an accessory to spiritual um, crime. I'll say it that way, okay? But anyway, talking about low and high vibration, a lot of you are not being realistic when you talk about low and high vibration. I'm going to explain something to you. I'm going to ask you a question. If you were to actually conjure up the fallen but archangel Lucifer, just sit with me in this thought process, in this thought bubble. We're going to do an exercise. How many of you would believe that Lucifer was high vibrational or low vibrational? Do you think Lucifer is high vibrational, or do you think Lucifer is low vibrational? I'm going to see when you're ready. I'm going to move when you're ready. I'm going to use my cards, okay? Do you think that Lucifer is high vibrational or low vibrational? Mind you, this is an archangel. This was one of God's most beautiful, listen to what I'm saying, most beautiful angels, who felt jaded because in the creation of humans, this particular angelic force felt like humans did not love God enough for them to have to serve them without question. Let me see if you guys are ready. You got the Ace of Cups reversed, the Page of Pentacles, the Seven of Cups. You're confused. You don't know. Okay, the Ten of Wands. Okay, okay, okay. Okay, the Hermit. Okay, and the Devil is at the bottom of the deck. Okay, okay, okay. All right. So you're not ready. You're not ready for this conversation. Let me ask if I should move forward. I'm gonna change up my yes and no spread. As soon as I show people how I do a yes and no spread, I'm noted I'll be on to a different type of yes and no spread, okay? Because I've been lately, just to tell you what I've been through lately, I've been urged to come up with new reading patterns. That the reading patterns that I have graduated out of those. And the questions that I'm asking are a lot more complex, and those particular reading patterns don't support that complexity, okay? So I'm trying to be obedient, but I'm one of those. I am a Taurus moon, so I do have a fixed moon. Um, and I am an eighth house stellium in some charts, sixth house stellium in some charts. You know, phew, I'm working on it. Okay, I have Scorpio in the sixth house, so I pull from some fixed positions. I'm working on changing it and breaking those habits. Fixed signs have a hard time with pivoting. Okay, and that's okay because fixed signs a lot of times are not put in a position to pivot. They're put in a position to build something that is long lasting, and doing the mutable thing of being able to pivot back and forth or start things but not finish things, such as cardinal signs, because cardinal signs are not here to finish a goddamn thing. Cardinal signs are here to start something and keep it moving. They start the thing. Fixed signs sit in administration of the thing, and the changes that are needed to be made within the thing are done by the mutables, and then they're off. Okay, fixed signs. That's why fixed signs are the royals, because they are going to be there to rule those particular areas. Okay, but fixed nature doesn't serve me because I am a mercurial person. I'm Mercury ruled in Western, and my Asamakaka, which is myself, even in Vedic, is Mercury, okay? Or Ganesh. Mercury and Ganesha are the same thing. We'll get into that shit another day, okay? That's just too much for today, honey. We'll get into that another day, okay? Interesting, huh? Now, the Mula Nakshatra, which I was sharing the other day, and listen, I'm frying the fuck out of the right type of people, which is good. You know, we need to know that we're not certain things. We need to know that just because we, want to be like someone doesn't mean that we get to fold ourselves into that person's identity. And some people just do not take or tolerate it well when you let them know, bitch, we are not the same. We're not cut from the same cloth. We never were the same. Because I would never be over here having a fever pitch about not being like somebody else. I like myself. And I don't have antisocial personality disorder. Okay? I don't. I don't like to be around a lot of people all the time. But then I get bored by myself, okay? Like, I go to the mountaintop and like, bitch, I'm done. I'm ready to party. I give the best parties also, okay? So, you know what I'm saying? Like, I get out of my own fucking way, and I like to get around people, okay? I'm not fully an antisocial person. It kind of is messed up because a lot of people think that because of my Gemini rising, that I'm really open and things of that nature. And then they meet me and they're like, oh my God, you're so talkative. You're so vivacious. And then I cut off. And I'm like, okay, my social battery has drained. Okay? I need to get the fuck out of here. So it's weird. It's a very weird dynamic that I have going on. But anyway, bitch. Okay, let me get back to what I was saying. Let me see if I can read this for you, because I want to know where you are. Because the conversation on social media, I'm a person that believes in innovating. I'm always ahead of time. Okay, I'm always ahead of time. Like I told you guys yesterday, Mercury is my ruler. The second ruler is the moon. The third is Neptune. And believe it or not, after Neptune is Uranus. So, bitch, I don't believe in staying the same. I believe in changing things up. I changed my hair. I changed my style. Hell, I even changed the pace in which I talk. I even changed the cadence of my voice. I believe in change. But at the same time, I'm fixed. That's weird, ain't it? Okay, so can I move forward? We got the Five of Cups. We have the Seven of Cups. The Seven of Cups again. Okay, the Six of Swords, the Queen of Cups, and the Six of Cups. Okay. So there are some of you who may not be ready to have this conversation. Some of you are not well attuned to have this conversation, and you're dealing with a lot of like there's someone that's here that's very confused. And I'm going to ask, let me look and see, because no one is hurting you here. Okay, you need to stop watching my videos. Something is wrong. You definitely need to consider there are certain things that you are not doing, and you have probably low vitamin D because you don't go out in the sun enough, and something is wrong with you on an emotional level, baby. You need to get away from me. I've told you every time I post, it's going to cause you disturbance. And let me see if that's what it is. We have the Oracle. We have the Four of Pentacles, the Empress, the Queen of Wands, the Nine of Pentacles, and the Wheel of Fortune. You're gonna have to. I'm gonna redo this because this bitch is not gonna hold our class up with her ass being crazy. You're gonna have to get the fuck, bitch. You're not finna hold us up in this time. I don't even have a lot of time, you know, to come and do these things, and you come bleeding the fuck in here, and we don't even want you in here. Like, I don't mean to be mean like that, but what the fuck? Like, I can clearly see that you are mentally disturbed, lady. Now, my people here, this particular, I can clearly see this. Okay? And you are always going somewhere and bleeding onto somebody. Whether you are imagining a relationship with a women or with men, you're willing to sleep with any damn body, and you think everybody is talking about you. Ain't nobody even talking about you. Not in a capacity that's positive, at least. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is your contribution to the world is pretty much walking around and acting like a sleazeball. You know, trying to put yourself. When I was speaking on last week, I was speaking on two different situations that had nothing to do with you. The only reason I've gotten on your ass and I've gotten tough enough to pull out that paperwork for New Jersey is because of the fact that whenever there's conflict somewhere, you think that that's an invitation for you. I can't even put on my chat anymore because you're so fucking crazy. You've spent too much money for me, and what it does for me is it makes me uncomfortable, because if you're spending that much money, you think you have ownership of the person. You can't separate your fantasy and what you think from reality. So that means you have a break in reality, and right now you're just going through an extended nervous breakdown. You're having a breakdown because your reality is not what you have been speaking on. You're highly delusional. You got North Node. Let me say this. You got South Node on. You have Saturn in Aries. You're having a Saturn fucking return. A Saturn return is not a complete thing. It's going back retrograde. So it's hitting those points again. So Saturn is going to go past its point at your birth 2 more times. That means that you are being wrecked left to right, because if you're building something that's not built on a firm foundation, it's coming down, or you don't lift off. You literally have one of the placements that can make someone to be a great long-term individual. But if you have mental health issues or head issues, things wrong with your mind, Aries rules the head. And you have Saturn. Like, what kind of person were you in your past life to where you had Saturn on your South Node? Like, you had to be a person that did some wild ass shit. to where Saturn is literally personally holding you back. No wonder you don't like Saturn. No wonder you don't like the color red, because the color red is the root chakra. It has nothing to do with sex. I don't know who told y'all the root chakra has anything to do with sex. The root chakra needs to be fully defined, or a person cannot earn money. They cannot take care of themselves. They cannot stand firm on their feet if they have a inadequate root chakra. The root chakra has nothing the fuck to do with sex, especially not with women, unless you primarily have sex in your butt. Men, the root chakra has to do with sex, especially if it's a man who's homosexual or bisexual, because it is located between the taint and the anus. That's why people have there's when they're nervous, their stomach get to growling and they get anal retentive, because they're clenching, because they're trying to gain stability. So if you're a woman, the root chakra, unless you primarily have sex out of your butt, you're not having a baby out of your butt. You're not releasing eggs out of your butt. If you are, you need to go to a gynecologist and a proctologist immediately, because you have some sort of tear or malfunction in your ass, to where you are bleeding and doing the things out of your butt. There's a perforation between the wall that separates your anal cavity from your vaginal cavity. But a woman's a whole system, vaginal system, all of her pleasure nerves, the nerves that she has to push, the nerves that control her Kegel response, those are not terminated. Even for a man, that's the reason why when men use their Kegels, you can see their dick pop up. Those things are in your sacral chakra. They do not terminate in your root chakra. This is why y'all say Capricorns can be assholes, because we literally will rip your ass a new asshole. That's why the old girl wanted to say that about me, because you feel like somebody's right there on your ass. That's your root chakra. That's where Saturn, that's where that's your ability to stand firm in your life. It has nothing to do with sex. Now, you could argue that sex for survival, but that is still pulling from your creative center. Don't you notice how creative women and men of the night are? Because they're activated from their sacral chakra. And the reason why they want to get out of the work is that eventually the sacral chakra is almost like you're being siphoned. Your creativity is going with every client, every John you have. They're taking a piece of your creative body from you, because that resides in your sacral chakra. We might need to have a real talk about the chakras, but no person who is of advanced knowledge as it relates to the chakras would ever deny you or talk negatively about the root, the sacral, and the solar plexus, because these are the things in which we ground ourselves into this world. Are we supposed to be stuck in these chakras? Absolutely not. But this is what I want to say to people who have an issue with those who are abstinent like me. You can't reach the higher chakras until you have a well-developed root chakra, sacral chakra, and solar plexus. So when you have people who are higher minded, understand that there's mastery of their root chakra. There's mastery of the sacral chakra. There's mastery of the solar plexus. You can't get to the heart chakra. You cannot get to the throat chakra. You cannot get to the third eye. You cannot get to the crown until you've been able to master these other ones. So if you're making an argument that a person is not well defined because they're not speaking about sex and they don't lead to sex all the time, you got another thing coming. There are some nuns right now that will put you on your back. You don't get to a place of abstinence from being bad at sex. You don't have a fucking Venus and Capricorn from being bad at sex. You don't you need listen to me. You don't get to those kind of positions. You don't have a Venus in Capricorn for being bad at sex. Okay, understand something here. You don't get Venus in those earth signs. Those are like break points. Like, let's take a break here. There's a reason why Virgo energy is considered to be the nun or the virgin. And why when they break out of the nun and virgin, they gonna fuck you out your socks. Okay? The sixth house in Virgo are considered to be some of the nastiest people that you've ever encountered, but very clean. There's a reason why you don't get to a place of being controlled sexually by not being good sexually. It is. You ever meet? Let me give it to you this way. I'm gonna get back to what I was talking about, y'all. I'm just doing a little bit of alchemy right now. You don't get to a place of mastery and control by being weak. You notice how you ever hear men who talk about their organs all the time? They talk about how big their dick is all the time. And you notice how every woman tells you that their sex was weak as hell? Like, they talk about sex all the time. They talk about how good their sex is, but when they actually perform, it's not good. You know those kind of people? Well, women can be that way too. Women who talk about sex all the time, there's a weakness in their libido. There's a weakness in their expression. People who tend to be more reserved, they have confidence in themselves in that arena, so they don't have to overcompensate by talking about it all the time. They're good at it. Think about what I'm saying. Why do you need to advertise something when everyone who's had some has been a happy camper? You advertise it to try to make yourself believe, and you talk about it in order to improve your own abilities. The worst thing to do is be someone who talks about it all the time, and your partner is sitting there looking at you upside the head, saying that they have to be the one to help lift your ass up because you don't, your return, your throwing it back game is terrible. Or you have limited mobility in your ability to actually give that ass up. Or you don't know how to throw that pussy in a circle. You can't spell your name with it because you are very weak, or your mobility is limited due to body mass. Or you just a goofy with loose coochie and don't even realize it. When I see women who talk about sex all the time, I think to myself, your sex must be terrible. It's got to be terrible. Like, you're trying to convince the world because you're overcompensating because something in your ego is broken. Because that's what I think about men. When men talk about their dicks all the time, I know that their sex is terrible. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to go into who, because I'm not going to go into the person, but I think the person, I don't mean no harm. I don't mean no harm. I really don't. Okay, I don't mean no harm. But you talked about sex a lot, just to turn around and let us know that you need a second session because it's too sensitive and you be busting real fast in the first. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. You talk about sex so much, you would think you were one of those people that could have an orgasm and keep going, and the dick don't lose the strength. Okay, you got the strength of the Rose of Jericho. You understand what I'm saying? It's an anointing on it. You would think that you were Shiva himself. Huh? You would think that Lingam didn't have any problem. Huh? And you need manual oral stimulation to get back up for a second round. Not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not even joking on that. I'm just saying the virility doesn't match the frequency of the fucking talking about. The talking about the sex and the frequency of talking about it doesn't match the output of the sexual ability. You understand? Do we get it now? So when you run off at the mouth about sex all the time, that shit gotta be whack. Because you should be fulfilled. And people who are fulfilled, they don't think about the things that that they're fulfilled in all the time. Most people are negative, and we're going to get back to what I came into this reading to talk about, or this session to talk about. Most people go negative. Once they fulfill something, they go to the thing that they are deficit in. They become obsessed with what they're deficit in. So what that means is that if you're deficit sexually, that's the reason you talk about it so much, is that you want more experience. So some of you were not actually swinging, but you found out if you talked about sex a certain way on social media, it helped you earn money. But you actually don't have experience doing a goddamn thing. Now you see why I was on the bitch ass. Yeah. Because not only are you going to put something out there, you're going to put something out there for our community to not use common sense sexually, but you won't even highlight or do the labor. You're going to talk about sex to black people, speak about open sex with black people, tell black women to go and go to swingers clubs and all this shit, but you won't talk to your people about HIV. You won't talk to your people about HPV. You won't talk to your people about syphilis. You won't talk to your people about shit that is causing issues with our fertility and virility, which in which will impact the next generation, which impacts our equity and power in this country and around the world. You won't do the labor of talking about the shadow of sex, but you want to go and talk about these other things. You want to lead with these other things. You want to tell your sisters to not have, basically, if the man is fine, give him your ass, your pussy, and your mouth. But I'm not going to talk to you about the rise of throat cancer amongst black women from untreated gonorrhea and syphilis and untreated chlamydia in the back of the throat. I'm not going to talk about that with you. I'm going to encourage you to go out there and give your ass away, even though you may contract something that will keep you from being able to produce children when you're financially able in your late 30s and 40s. I'm not going to tell you how to protect yourself. I'm going to tell you to be a flaming fucking idiot. Right? Now we put a voice behind the shit that I post. Because some of y'all ass are in here, too. I be wanting to knock your... Some of you got the face of a fucking pug. Looks like you're hard of breathing. Bitch, I be wanting to flatten your fucking nose in your face. Because I'm looking at you and I'm like, you don't see that you got people who are listening to you, who are existing in a place of shame. Yeah, you reinforce that their sexual freakiness has a home to express itself, but you're not addressing the fact that those warts are eating your sister up. That she can't seem to get a clean pap smear, or it's been at least 6 years since she's had a pap smear. So leave the sex education to the experts who are going to do the work. If you're not going to do the work, then shut the fuck up, because you look nasty. And you look as though your sex is horrible. You don't strike me as a woman that's throwing that ass in a circle. Okay? Anybody who have to do a love spell is not keeping no nigga with that pussy. I'm going to tell you that right now. God gave you a love spell, baby. It's called Kegel muscles. It's called I suck the dick with both mouths. You understand? I had to go negative. I had to bring the frequency down a little bit so you can hear me. It's called, it feels like a mouth is taking him in while I'm sitting on it. You understand what I'm saying? You ever had a man say that when you were having sex, when he was having sex with you, it was like you were sucking him from both mouths? God gave you something, a goddess gave you something incredible. You ain't got to do a fucking love spell. And if that man loves you, you don't have to let him know that you're doing, like, you don't have to do one without him. As a matter of fact, I love when I see two people in love do Saturnian spell work with each other. and then do Venus spells and Mars spells to stay sexually attracted to each other for the entirety of their relationship or their lifetimes. There's a way that you can do love workings that are beautiful and that do not violate anyone else's free will. If you love a person so much, undo that Venus spell. If you can trust and believe that this person is good, undo it. And let everybody know you undid it. Let's do some grown woman shit. Outside of that, you just need to just listen because you're outclassed. Some of you, it's okay if you got your spirituality from reading books and becoming acquainted with them because you got an inner calling. But you got to also remember that witches become stronger as they age. Don't let American Horror Story, that this is where they got it wrong. You know American Horror Story fucked over Papa Legba and Baron Sumdi. Baron Sumdi. They fucked over Papa Legba and they fucked over Baron Sumdi. Now I did hear Baron Sumdi like that little white a little bit. Okay? I do understand that Baron Sumdi, some cultures say that Baron Sumdi likes that Cuban shuffle, likes that white Pegasus. You know what I'm saying? That white horse. Okay? But they called this particular version in American Horror Story Papa Legba. And then they made Papa Legba out into a devil-like creature. And you can't do that with Baron Sumdi. But you know who you can do that with? Eshu. Eshu always follows who? Oshun. So if you're a person who is a child of Oshun, Eshu is just right up the corner, which is one of the reasons why Pumagira is considered a female Eshu in Colombia, and majority of it is in Brazil under Candomblé. Pumagira or Pumagira is considered a female Eshu because the likeness of Oshun and Eshu are combined into one deity. But Eshu follows Oshun. It's kind of like Thoth following Sekhmet. We'll get into that at a later date. But a lot of people don't know when you're dealing with Sekhmet, Thoth or Tahuti is not too far behind. And who is Thoth and Tahuti? Some people say that that's Hermes or Mercury. Mercury has a lot more properties of the God Almighty than you know. I would implore you to look up who Ta is, the husband of Sekhmet, who is considered to be the creator of all things. And what did even our Bible say that God created, created the world with the word, created life with the word. Who rules words? Mercury. Hermes. Mercury or Hermes or, are able to travel many different realms. They are psychopomp. They have endless immortality. They're the only God that has immortality. They can go from the underworld, the hell realm, the heaven realm, and back to the human realm, and they keep their immortality the whole time. I would even go as far as to say that Mercury is even a time traveler, more so than Uranus, more so than the moon. And that Mercury utilizes the moon in order to do just that. But that's my perspective, okay? I haven't completely fleshed it all the way out. But I would argue that Mercury, you guys are thinking that it's Jupiter, and Jupiter is the king of the gods. But you guys seem to forget that Mercury is able to manipulate how they show up. They can show up as an old man or as a young man, an animal. They can change species. Think about that for a second. Mercury can change species. You need a strong Mercury to even be able to read or hear or communicate with telepathy with animals. Your Mercury needs to be quite defined to do that. We'll get into some things later on that. Of course, you need a little bit of Neptune. You need you know, you need some trans-Saturnian positions, but hell, Jupiter and Saturn even operate like a trans-Saturnian planet, like a generational planet, and those are still a part of our personal planets. That lets you know how potent those particular energies are and how much of a big deal they are. This is, after all, Saturn's universe at the end of the day. But Mercury is a part of Godhead, if anything is. You know? So even Buddha is considered to be a deity carrying a lot of mercurial energy. I just really find that interesting. But nonetheless, yeah, people talking about something, that even goes back to God. In order to create something, God spoke it, used the word. I mean, in order to create the world, God used the word. So a person who's talking about something all the time, like their sex, they're trying to create a better sex life. Okay, we can get off of that. Okay, let's go back to the low and the high vibrational things. Are we ready? Are we ready to determine if Lucifer is high vibrational or low vibrational? We have the Seven of Wands, we have the Emperor, we have the Sun, we have the Ten of Pentacles, and we have the Nine of Wands. Some of y'all are scared. If you scared, go to church, bitch. Well, I guess you're at church. So I guess you can sit still. Sit still. You're here. You're already fucking listening. I don't know what to tell you. Lucifer is both. There's not a human that's listening to me that's ever going to be higher vibrational than Lucifer. You couldn't even fathom it in your form. In order to match Lucifer's vibration at the highest point, your flesh would fall away from you and your bones would disintegrate. You ever see, look under, like, if you've ever been a science person like me, and you see how those eggs, how if you look at the after the sperm fertilizes the egg, you see that the ovum starts shaking violently, and it starts shaking until it splits into two. Then it continues to shake, and then it splits into four, and then it splits into eight cells, and it keeps on, and it keeps splitting, and keeps splitting, and keeps splitting. That's probably the highest vibration you've been since you've been thought of, was when you were in your mom's uterus. That's probably the highest of vibration that you've ever been in a physical form. Now, I'm not talking about when you are in meditation and you are being assisted in meditation, or you are going through a program like a Sadhguru program as you are evolving, but you are emanating outside of your body through meditation and deep projection into a different realm away from your physical body. I mean, people who are in this type of meditation can be in that meditation for 8, 9, 10 hours. I'm hearing a couple of days where they completely release their attachment to their body as they are existing in another realm. But they have to leave their body, is what I'm saying. You physically cannot do it because your flesh will move away from you. How you notice this is true is what happens in, unfortunately, very devastating accidents. The body is torn. The body is crushed. And those things are high impact, moving at high frequency and high vibration. The body cannot sustain itself being split like that and then come right back together. Not yet, at least. We've not reached that ability in science yet. Do I think that there's a sci-fi time in which if there was something happening, we were having a collision, we would be able to phase ourselves into a position to where it impact, we don't separate and don't end our life at some point? I'm sure that we'll probably be On the Kardashev scale, 1.5 as humanity or civilization would be like 1.5 when we're able to do that. I mean, if we became civilization one, we would pretty much do everything via telepathy, and we would stop all that talking of the mouth. We would go back to writing. And that brings me to another thing. If what we're doing is so palatable, why is it that our children are illiterate, ladies? If what you're, why are our children illiterate? Why are your babies illiterate? Why can't they read and write in cursive? Why can't they spell shit? How come they don't understand suffix versus a prefix? They don't understand the structure of a word. They don't even know to go and look up the etymology of a word. In 2026, after 100 years, 126 years, 126 years ago, our people were in a renaissance, creating colleges, extremely intelligent. We had a golden age of superior intellect amongst black peoples of these United States of America. And in 2026, 126 years later, in the care of ourselves, we are not even able to read in cursive nor write in cursive. If we're so advanced, why are we so regressed? What's wrong with our collective vaginas that we are producing illiterate ass children, underdeveloped children? Okay? And yet you over here, a Christian or an anti-Christian, and you believe that you're high vibrational, but you can't speak to your sisters and you can't speak to your children, and you're producing illiterate children, or you are illiterate. But you claim that you plead the blood of Jesus. One thing Jesus wasn't was illiterate. Jesus went to study amongst the kings and their sons and their princes in Egypt. Jesus went to mystery schools where they talked about alchemy, magic, teleportation, telepathy in Egypt. Mystery schools that were only available for those who were becoming pharaohs. He himself probably even studied at the Library of Alexandria, the one that was burned down. So one thing Jesus wasn't was illiterate. So if you love Jesus so much, how come you don't love a book or some sort of knowledge base? As a matter of fact, if you are a follower of Christ, you should be far more intelligent than you are. If you think for one moment that when you go to Rome, Italy, that those cardinals are illiterate, you got another thing coming. You can't even make it to certain branches of nunnery, let alone being a cardinal in the Catholic Church, unless you are damn near a doctor of some sort of collegiate program, some sort of scholar, if you will. I've never met a cardinal who was illiterate. Most of them I've met had several masters, several doctorates, were highly educated, meaning that in order to even properly decode theology or theosophy, you have to be an academic. So a lot of you who are jumping up and in the spiritual community speaking against the Bible thumpers, you're talking to people who are illiterate, and you are illiterate as well. Think about what I'm saying. In order to actually decode that text, to decode the Old Testament properly, because when you get into the Kohans and the rabbis, they are also doctors. They are not illiterate. When you get to those who are high ranking amongst the Islamic faith, they are not illiterate, and they speak multiple languages. So that lets you know that the illiteracy amongst smaller factions of religious people is what you're angry with. You don't actually know what the fuck is going on. And in certain sects of Moorish, or people who are attempting to be Moorish, if you guys looked at Lovecraft Country, you would understand that for black men to be Masons, it's laughable. If you actually watch Lovecraft Country, you would see that the whole time he was trying to become you. But I digress. You would also see that they killed off the father who was aware of these things, killed off the last human relic of what humans were after descending from the angelic, or the non-corporeal realm. They killed off a native indigenous woman who had both a penis and a vagina that were in full working order. So if you have not looked at Lovecraft Country, I need you to look at it again. There's a reason why they took that sucker off of television. But I digress. There's a lot of shit that's there. But any black man who is trying to be a Mason, you are an idiot. If you are a black woman and you joined a sorority, what the fuck is wrong with you? You're trying to be an Eastern Star. Do you know what an Eastern Star is? Look at it. And for those of you who are super Christian, girl, fuck you. Eastern Star, say it over again. Eastern Star, Eastern Star, Ishtar. Eastern Star, Ishtar. Eastern Star, Ishtar. Eastern Star, Ishtar. You're trying to be Isis. You are Isis. As a matter of fact, the lady with the imprint of the star on her head is called Sopdet, and her husband is Sa, a mercurial being who is the creator of the universe. And he was inspired to create the different star systems because of his love of Sopdet. He didn't just give Sopdet the universe, he created the universe from being inspired by his muse, which is Sopdet. These are supposedly the primordial ancestors of the Egyptian and every pantheon that we know. So in order to decode theology and theosophy, when you start reaching at these higher levels of academia, then what falls away from you is this ignorance, that there's a separation between the knowledge. What falls away from you is this anger, this church hurt, because you find that you were a victim to ignorance and you were a victim to illiteracy. You were a victim to men being installed with power before they had presence. In order to properly look into the Bible and derive anything, you need to be a master mathematician. You need to be a polymath, a master of many different subjects of academia. You need to be a scholar or be someone who's mastered various forms of scholastic ability. You cannot be an idiot, because you literally cannot be invited into these mystery schools that are not available to the public and should not be available to the public. Because look what happened when these niggas gave y'all, when they gave y'all motherfucker sage. Look at what y'all did with the sage. You honestly think that the mystery school should be open to the public, and the little bit that you knew about spirituality, you decided to go have an orgy and pass around diseases, and you decided to create porn and defile the connection of the divine masculine and divine feminine through sexual courting. You decided to take the one highway to God and make it a perverse thing by creating pornography. They should have never gave you niggas internet. And I'm not talking about just black people. When I say that, I'm saying it past black people. I'm saying that using what the terminology was created to do to black people or people of color, and I'm applying it to those who were running Western civilization. You got so much to say about white culture, but you act just like them. You don't have pride in yourself, sister. You're a pass around just like a cave woman. Like your ancestors did not come from higher knowledge beings. You act like you're missing a couple chromosomes, like you're special needs. No wonder you feel like barking. I think I would too. So, like I said, Lucifer, the light bearer, not in favor or against Lucifer, definitely a fallen angel, was of melanin. I'm not going to go there yet. We're not ready to talk about that yet. We're not ready to talk about that yet. But can range from high and low vibration. Okay? The reason why Lucifer fell is that they figured out that they can go low and high. And they are made of a certain light spectrum, which requires a certain thing. Okay? A certain type of state of being. So now y'all wasn't ready to have this conversation, but we needed to have the conversation. When you're talking about low and high vibration and you're doing wards, take your time and stop being lazy and be specific about what you are weeding out of your aura. Because there could be people who are low vibrational, but they don't mean you any harm, and they can't do you any harm because you are graduated upon a certain level unless you take yourself back down to that level. They can't really do the type of harm that you think that they can because you give your power away. But they may be in a low vibration because of depression and certain illnesses. Illness can also set a low vibration. One of the reasons why people wanted certain spiritualists to lose weight is that if your weight is causing you ailments such as high blood pressure, diabetes, or other issues, those illnesses were going to lower your vibration, which would keep you from being able to access or assess higher knowledge or higher realms of knowledge because you were horny, you were hungry, you were starving, you were angry. And a person who's always angry and jealous is at a risk of blowing their kidneys and at a risk of blowing their liver. And if you damage your liver, it is one of the most painful deaths and long standing painful deaths that you can have. And there are certain STDs that will kill your liver. And I can tell you one thing, putting mouth to somebody's ass is why we're putting belt to ass now. Because there's certain things. You can't never get an asshole clean. In order to eat chitlins, you got to boil them suckers for hours at 350 degrees or more. For hours. And some of y'all put a sprinkle of water on your ass and said it's ready to be ate. Some of y'all are so... You're too ashamed to admit this, but a man told me he became addicted to the taste of fecal matter. And we started talking and going through his life, and I started working on his energy. That man threw up in the middle of our session. Because even his previous existence prior to talking to me was so disgusting that he could not handle the shit that he said. Literally, the shit that was coming out of his mouth. We were speaking for some time. And as I spoke to him, his frequency was rising. And as it rose, he started to smell his own breath. And it was something that he could not fucking tolerate. He threw up. So some of y'all are walking in the middle of pig shit. And the only reason you can't tell the difference is because your frequency is low. And you are out of your mind. You have been led over to a reprobate mind. and you are out of your goddamn mind and don't even know it. And it's not until you get around people like me, even though I'm talking about sex and I can be a bit vulgar, the frequency that I'm existing at, I start to pull your frequency up. And now you want to clean your room. Now you want to clean your house. Some of you probably want to go brush your teeth after this conversation. Good. Good. Let's start with the frequency, high vibration, high frequency. Let's start to understand what those things mean. And understand that when you are claiming that you're going, this is a very important thing before I go. So you say you want to be high vibrational, high frequency. And you wonder why some people go and they go to retreats and they get their frequency real high. And next thing you know, they have a terrible accident and they pass away from this realm. Their frequency is too high to stay on earth. So events will align up to release them from the prison of their body. So when you say, I want to be, fuck Saturn, you're asking to be released from your body. So let's make sure we're not suicidal around here. Because if you're suicidal, your frequency is not high. You don't even have to worry about frequency or vibration. And that sucks because people who are on that kind of spectrum, you don't get as lucky as Eric. If you guys ever follow the channel Channeling Eric, I would highly recommend that you tap in with them. Those are some lovely ladies over there. I don't necessarily agree with some of the mediums that come over there because I feel as though how can a medium who doesn't have experience living any other life than being a white woman really pick up on nuance from people of color? And until you have people of color doing mediumship, you're not getting the full story. So much so that when white women would do mediumship, I'm not talking about the mom, Eric's mother. I'm talking about the mediums. They have to go in and they can't even conceive. I think some of them tried to do mediumship for Jesus, but they couldn't even perceive Jesus because they don't have the ingredients within themselves. So I really would like to see in Channeling Eric that his mother evolves and brings more black mediums, especially educated black mediums, outside of just women or white women, onto her platform. And that shows a bit of evolution, if you ask me. That shows that she has developed a bit of melanin on a spiritual level. That shows that after this life, she's going to continue to evolve. There should be some melanin in there somewhere. So I would like to see some changes in which we evolve the programming and we're able to get a full picture of the things that we are channeling. Okay? I would love that. There's such a huge opportunity there. But I love her channel. I love the things that she's put out. I was watching her when she was doing work with this other group called The Shiny Show. And this particular lady that was doing mediumship, she claimed to have been a medium for Michael, but she turned it, Michael the Archangel, but she turned it into a sexual thing. So I can understand why The Shiny Show went away, because their host, because she's stuck, unfortunately, she's stuck in a sexual realm. She is a Caucasian woman. Not that that matters, but it kind of does, but not that it does, but it kind of does. She wasn't able to hold on to that frequency of Archangel Michael because she was taking Michael in as a sexual lover, as opposed to being a medium of being able to purport the messages coming from that particular archangel. So there would have been some discrepancies. But she used to host a lady on her channel when she wasn't being a Archangel Michael freak and trying to molest Archangel Michael, which is crazy as hell to me. That's why when I see people talk about deities and they become sexual with the deity, I know that something's wrong with the soul. Because where the hell did you get the permission to see them in that kind of way, or to classify them that way when they are a master? That's crazy as hell. Like, why would you waste the opportunity to commune with that kind of knowledge source by bringing in low vibrational and blocking yourself from the knowledge, and raising your own frequency by taking it into a sexual or servitude space? I've seen people even say that these beings were there. They got me. They watching me. They have made sure they gonna go fuck up other people. They even, people have talked about these high vibrational beings as if they are their own personal attack dogs. If that ain't a person that's out of their fucking mind, I don't know what is. And this is, unfortunately, this is what's in the spiritual community. People who think like this. They really think like this. They don't have the ability to keep anything sacred. They molest everything that they come into knowledge with. Anything that they speak about, they're sexually molesting it. And these are women. But yet these are the same women that say that they're going to protect children, but they can't be trusted to deliver messages without sexually molesting the being. Is wild. Is wild cakes. Is wild zebra cakes out here. Okay, it is absolutely yikes on bikes on fire. Okay, you can't even get into talking about something as a trans woman without molesting and without molesting the gender of a man or a woman. You can't even seem to talk to your sisters without talking about something sexual. It's yikes on triple bikes. Something's wrong, baby. Okay, so no, we're probably not ready to have this vibrational conversation, because you don't understand that things lower their vibration to come and help you raise your vibration. Or some of you go balls to the wall and you start taking DMT and you start tripping and you wonder why you almost had a life altering accident that took you on up out of here. Because you don't understand physics, you don't understand quantum physics, and what it means for you when you exist in certain realms without proper knowledge to ground yourself with. So the cards were right. We're not ready, but we don't have no other choice but to get ready. Okay? Start investigating yourself and figure out what's going on with you. When you're having sex, is it satisfying for you? Are you having sex with men or women and the relationships are over quickly? What is going on with your sex? What is going on with your reception of the penis that disintegrates the relationship shortly after coitus? After coitus, the relationship is falling apart. What's wrong with you? Why are you attracting people that you can't bond with? Why are you attracting things why are you self-destructing? And then why are you repackaging that self-destruction to share that misery with other people? Start investigating yourself and figure these things out. Ask yourself the questions that need to be asked. Maybe your mind, you don't have a lot of abstinence, so therefore you don't have a sober mind. But you can call upon the sober spirits to help you while you're not in a state of sober. Okay? Start figuring this shit out. Because we are coming into a new world, a new dynamic, and I would like to see you on the other end. But it's not my job to make sure of it. And it's absolutely my job to destroy anything that attempts to get in the way or be a vessel that's in the way of enlightenment for myself or for those who I'm here to work with. Not lead, because I'm not a leader. And that's in that type of thing. Not in this arena will I be a leader. But I am here to help nurture because of, and it's after the fact, after I've nurtured myself. because I belong to me first, and then to the world second, if at all. This is what sovereignty is. And I would like to share that gift of sovereignty with everyone. But you need to figure out what's going on with you. All right? This is your girl, Nala-Ife, also known as Nala the Neptunian. And I am the copologist. I am also the Neptunian translator. I'm also Sheba, the specialist. I'm also HRH Queen Regnet, Isis. I'm also Sekhmet the Great and Gifted. Admiral Louisiana de Lurigistar. And absolutely the sorceress and lordess Lucille Morningstar. And I love each and every one of you on the highest spectrum of it. And I just hope today that you start to investigate yourself, investigate the ways in which you speak about a thing and speak about others, and maybe even stop defecating in your own mouth. Okay? Y'all have a good one.